This is Join Us in France, episode 276. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and on this episode of Join Us in France, I talk to Shauna Dinsart, who lives near me in Toulouse and who had her baby here. So we talk about what it's like, a few things where France needs to do better, and this episode will give you a great glimpse into everyday life in France. Right after the episode, I will also give you an update about living with COVID-19 and how French people are coping with it, or trying to anyway. Most of my listeners live in the US, where you're now facing a variety of different situations. But no matter what stage your area is in, I guarantee you will eventually be asked to shelter in place, because that's the only way to fight this nasty thing. I really dislike the term lockdown that people are throwing around so much, because it's a term borrowed from prisons, and it's excessive. But I'll get back to that in a bit. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/276, the number 276. And if you're planning a trip to France, even for several months from now, the site is chock full of great resources and you should check it out. I want to read you a short and sweet review of my Marais tour. Whoever wrote this said, "Wonderful tour, learned so much!" ! Well, thank you so much for letting me know, whoever you are. And if you take one of my tours, I really appreciate a review. It really helps. And as a podcast listener, you are entitled to a discount on my tours. Go to joinusinfrance.com/audio tours to see all the details. And I'm only saying that because people will listen to this episode in the future. But of course, right now, nobody is taking my tours. But it'll come back. Bonjour, Shauna, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Is it raining in Paris?
I'm not in Paris right now, actually. I'm in Toulouse.
You're in Toulouse. Then I know it's raining.
It is. Are you near me?
I'm near you. Yes, I'm in a suburb of Toulouse. So yeah.
Ah, me too. Maybe we're neighbors.
Do you live in Toulouse?
Yeah. I moved. I was living in Paris for a little bit over a year, and then I moved down to Toulouse last year.
Oh, excellent. Well, welcome, neighbor.
Thank you, neighbor.
All right, so today we're talking about having a baby in France. Now, I've produced some episodes about moving to France, even one about buying a house in France, thinking this person is going to retire in that home later, and also one about seeing doctors in France. But I'm French born and raised myself in Toulouse, but I had my daughter while I was in the US, because at the time I was living in the US. And so I can't really talk to having a baby in France very much, besides, chatting with other women. I mean, obviously I have the background information.
Yeah.
But I'm
heard the stories.
Yes, but I'm very curious how it went and how you got to have a baby in France.
Well, I'm very curious how you had a baby in the U.S. I think that's quite funny that we reversed countries and had a baby in each other's countries. So that's pretty cool. So you probably know more about having a baby in my country than I do, actually, because I have not done that yet. So
there you go.
Sure. But yeah, I'd love to explain my story. I moved, I'm from the U.S. I was from Seattle, and I was working in Texas for a few years, working in aerospace. And I met my husband, who is French, and he is from Avignon. Mm-hmm. And we kind of were at a place of where should we live, because neither of us were from Texas. It was just where we were working, and our project was ending. So I really wanted to move to France. I think that's pretty typical of an American to want to move to France. It's kind of like this dreamy idea that not many people get the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
So of course I jumped all over that and I said, let's move to France. And we did, and we moved to Paris. And it was hard for me to, like, I wouldn't be able to get the same level of job that I had in France as I did in the US. So I started to take on more of my creative work and really pursue my writing. And with that comes working from home and having a lot of spare time. And that kind of is what led me to have a baby in France, because it was one of those times of, I don't have a whole lot going on right now. So
right.
we know we want a baby eventually.
Yeah.
So why not now?
Yeah.
And it was really a decision out of convenience and time, which I don't think is a typical reason people have a baby, but that was our reason, and I won't take it back. I think it was the right thing to do at that time.
Right.
But yeah, so we decided we were going to do that, and I got pregnant in Paris, and so I had a doctor in Paris, I was seeing, but I ended up having the baby actually inside Toulouse, in Paris. So yeah.
So how did it go? Like the baby, the experience, the pregnancy, the giving birth, all of that.
Yeah.
Compare that a little bit to what happens. I'm sure you have friends who've had babies, babies in the U.S. Tell us how it compares.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories, and I think there are a lot of differences. For me, I think the better care probably comes, it depends how you define better care, I guess. But for me, I felt like I got better care here than I've heard of in the U.S. in terms of during my pregnancy. I was able to see my doctor really whenever I wanted. He wanted to see me every month, and every month I got an ultrasound, which is not typical in the U.S. from my understanding.
No, you would only do that if you had some serious problems with the pregnancy.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I think you get like 2 ultrasounds or something during pregnancy in the U.S. in the first 6 months. And that is due to the insurance restrictions. But here we don't have those. So my doctor had an ultrasound machine in his office, and so he would give me an ultrasound every single visit. So I got to see my baby all the time, which was great. It was a huge plus that I know a lot of my friends in the U.S. were jealous of, because if I happened to find out the sex before the 20-week mark, like in the U.S., like if the baby was in the right position, I could have found out whenever it was in the right position. So there were some cool things like that.
So I'm assuming that you're on the French healthcare system, since your husband's French and he probably works in France.
Yeah, he works in France. He works for an American company in France.
Right. But he still has French benefits and healthcare and all that.
Yep. So I have my carte vitale and I have my mutuelle, and so I have the full coverage.
Right.
I think, and even if, to be honest, if I didn't have any coverage, I think the bills would have still been less than in the United States.
Yeah, it's pretty typical that in France you pay less, even if you pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
Than you do in the U.S. with just your copays.
Yep.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing when you understand how much, and it's a lot. The difference is astounding.
Yeah. So recently on the Join Us in France Facebook group, somebody mentioned that she had to have an emergency appendectomy while she was visiting in France, and that the total cost to her was around $3,000, and that included 5 days in the hospital plus follow-up visits every day with a nurse for 2 weeks.
With no insurance.
Yes, this was out of pocket.
Yeah.
And then she had a bear of a time getting that small amount of money reimbursed by her American insurance, but she got it back eventually. But, it's like not even comparable. And and the reason why it is that way is because everybody in France has basic health insurance from a government-run program.
Right.
And so the government gets to set prices.
Right.
And doctors are all in private practice, and they can ask for however much they want. But people are not dumb.
No. And they don't take advantage of that.
Right.
In my experience.
So there are some doctors that will say, and usually it's like the more like holistic kind of doctors, doctors who have odd practices. In my book, anyway, they will often charge more than the normal rate, and they have to disclose that in their waiting room. So when you enter, you just see, a normal office visit is €25, but I charge $100.
Yeah.
And if you don't like that, I've never seen that. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Okay.
Because there's so few people who get away with this, unless you're like, a superstar of doctors. People are, you get perfectly good care for $25 a visit. That's for a general practitioner.
Right.
So why would you pay 4 times as much?
You wouldn't.
Yeah, most people wouldn't.
Yeah, most people wouldn't.
Right. And then you and I, we both have top-up insurance.
Yep.
So the national insurance is what's called régime obligatoire. Mm-hmm. So that's everybody is into one of those. There's not just the one company managing it, but that's neither here nor there. And then on top of that, when you're employed, you typically can purchase, or your employer will purchase for you, a top-up insurance called mutuelle, which means that your out-of-pocket is almost nothing ever.
Or sometimes it is nothing. Yeah.
Right. Right. So the cost of you having your baby in France was probably zero.
You know what? It was almost zero. Right. Near the end, I had to actually come in to the hospital 2 or 3 times per week because my son was small in the womb. And so they wanted to do some non-stress tests. But after 6 months, after you're 6 months pregnant, everything is covered 100%. And so I didn't have to pay for any of that. Mm-hmm. And I stayed for a week in the hospital. They keep you for at least 3 days, no matter what. Even for the most simple, uncomplicated birth, you're staying in the hospital for 3 days. Mm-hmm. I was in there for a week, and I think we paid total €200, and we might have been reimbursed that even.
Right.
So almost nothing.
Right. No, it's just, for Americans, it's mind-blowing when I mention this. And I've had, and I'm sure you've had this happen to you as well, I've had visitors from the U.S., friends or family, when it's my husband's relatives, they are elderly. So sometimes there are things that happen. I mean, my mother-in-law broke her foot last time she was here. That could happen at any age, right?
Right.
And it didn't cost very much. I think maybe.
No, it's not. It's not devastating.
No, I think it was under $100 or something. I mean, it's not like, and she got good care. She's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, when I go back to the States with my son, I'm always like, please, nothing happen, because it's going to be hugely different.
Right. So it's really important for those of us, Americans or expats who live in France full time, to have travel insurance, because if anything happens, that would be a catastrophe. I mean, it's we can't afford, And last time I needed to see a doctor in the U.S., I actually asked when I called to make the appointment. This was my old doctor that I had, when I was living there, he was my doctor. Well, I was treated like a brand new patient because I hadn't seen him in 3 years. So there were a lot of fees for just being a new patient. And they couldn't tell me how much they were going to charge me.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that hospitals won't even tell you how much.
No, you have no idea. It's like, you're going to do this and you have no idea. In France, it's very straightforward. Every doctor has to tell you, this is how much I charge, period.
And then you walk out and everything is paid. You're not, a huge difference for me is you're not sent a medical bill a couple months later. In the US, something can happen and you have no idea what you're paying. And then, a month later you receive this $1,500 medical bill. And it's not like that here. You pay what you owe and then you leave and then you don't hear from them again.
Right. You're done.
It's so comforting. Yeah.
Yeah. Once you leave the hospital, you will do it doesn't always happen that way because you may have to pay something next time you go see this practitioner. Like if it's something where you have follow-ups, they may say, well, she's going to come back. She'll feel better. We'll just take care of it next time.
Right.
And also in France, they will see you without asking you for a credit card.
Yep.
Like, you're going to a hospital. The first thing you need to do is not give them your credit card. So It's a very different system.
Very, very different.
Anyway, sorry, I've been talking too much.
That's all right.
How was it for you having your baby here? And how old is he?
He is 14 months.
Oh, he's still little.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. He's just the most fun little handful ever right now. He's like so much trouble, but so much fun.
Is he walking yet?
He's not. He just started standing on his own and he thinks it's so funny and he's so proud of it that he just knocks himself over. He just like cracks up and falls over and he's just adorable. So I feel like the whole experience was really positive. Like I look back at even the day that I gave birth and the whole experience was positive. Like, of course you're going through pain and of course it's hard on your body, but like my husband and I were in the room just like laughing throughout my labor, just having fun. So I feel like I had a really positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
My doctor who had been following my pregnancy, he was on vacation, so I wasn't expecting him to come in, and they actually called him and he said, well, you know what, I'm actually not busy right now, so I'm going to come in. And he came in and delivered my baby. Nice. So that was really cool. Yeah, I feel like I got really good care the whole time, which was, obviously comforting as a first-time mom and being in a different country. I'm not confident in my language skills at all. I can get by. I can go to the doctor, or go to the grocery store. I can kind of go anywhere, but I'm not super confident in it. So I think if it were just me at the hospital and not my French husband, I would have had a really hard time with the language. But he was there.
It's very specific. I mean, medical stuff is really specific. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, like the terminology. It doesn't come right to your mind, especially during labor. Right. So I feel like that was all really positive. And then
you didn't have any complications?
I didn't really have many complications. My son was born quite small, and so that's why we stayed longer. We stayed for a week, and which I also felt comforted by that as well, because they followed him. He wasn't he was under what the equivalent of NICU. He was under the care of the neonatal staff, but he was in my room with me, so he wasn't separated from me, but they still followed him. So I felt like I had a whole bunch of people on my son, which was really great and comforting. And
so you had a neonatologist come to your room and take care of...
He would take him down to the neonat facility or room down at the end of the hall. We would do that several times a day. But for the most part, he was in the room with me. And nothing ended up being wrong. It was all like precaution and just make sure. And from what I understand in the States is that sometimes you might leave the same day of having the baby or like the next day. And here, I think it's really cool that they keep you at least 3 days, because those 3 days are an absolute whirlwind. And I mean, having this new little being to take care of.
Especially for first-time parents. It's a huge deal.
Exactly. Yeah. Not knowing how to change their diaper and like bathe them and do all of these things you need to do.
There are a lot of emotions around this as well. Like you're first-time parent, you're afraid of. I was like this. Well, but of course, my daughter was born very prematurely, so she also had a lot of medical issues.
Right.
But even when she was at full term, bringing her home was really rough on me emotionally. And thank goodness my husband and my mother-in-law were so, they were so willing to do things and they weren't afraid. I was petrified.
I was too.
Yeah.
I was a mess.
So it's really difficult emotionally. So you need support. You really do. Like you can't, I don't understand how they can just send women, like, go home with your baby and figure it out. Like, no, don't do that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because the emotional support aspect of it, I felt, like I said, comforted by being there for a few days, and I was an absolute mess those few days. I was crying at everything. It was the hormonal shift. Everything was so heavy for me emotionally. But what didn't happen that I would say is a challenge here is that when I came home, the midwives, they come visit you at your home and they check on you, they check on the baby. They do that several times after you give birth. But what was never asked by a midwife or a practitioner like my doctor or anybody was how I was doing emotionally and mentally. And that is something that's taken very seriously in the U.S.
Right.
And I know that I'm not sure when it started, but I know that now the doctors who are following pregnant women after they deliver, they're definitely like scanning for postpartum depression and asking the right questions. And that never happened for me, which was hard because I did struggle with postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And
it's really common. I mean,
I feel like almost everybody does to a certain extent.
Well, in my case, it wasn't so much postpartum depression. It was just, well, maybe it was. My daughter's 21, so it was a long time ago. But it was because she was so fragile physically, medically.
Yeah.
It was the medical issues that petrified me. Because
that's really scary, yeah.
Yeah, because you go from everything's fine to, it's big emergency. Your baby turns blue on you. It's not comforting.
No.
This way.
And my son came out blue as well. And I remember the doctor trying to distract me with my placenta.
Yeah.
And I was just like, just give me my baby. And I didn't understand what was happening. Right. But,
they needed to intervene right then. Yeah.
Yeah, they did. And I didn't know. And they were doing their best to keep me from seeing what was going on the other side of the room. But I'm not sure if everyone struggles from postpartum depression specifically, but I know that everyone has their emotional roller coaster after giving birth. And I think it's something that should be paid attention to just in case it does become severe.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
It doesn't happen here, or it didn't for me.
It didn't. Maybe it's better now. I think in France, we're very behind when it comes to psychotherapy. For the longest time, all you could do in France was psychoanalysis. So you'd lie on the sofa and you'd go every week and you'd talk to this person who never talked back to you. This weird stuff. They were very much into Freud kind of theories. And even to this day, like I listen to a lot of France Culture, so it's French. It's like the French NPR equivalent. Whenever they have shows about mental health, they always feel obligated to invite these dinosaurs that, just don't understand that there are better ways to help people. They're just still in the old mindset. So I'm not surprised that it's new that they talk about postpartum depression.
I don't even think they really are, to be honest.
Yeah.
In my experience, and that was 14 months ago, so
not that long ago.
New. Yeah, pretty new. And I even kind of went to them and said, "Hey, I'm feeling pretty down. I need to talk about this." And it was kind of resisted, I guess.
Yeah.
It was kind of, "Oh, it's the baby blues. It's normal. Oh, go." But make sure you have a social life, like these kind of things, rather than let's really dive deep and look at how we might be able to treat this for you. And I've had mental health care in the U.S. for depression and anxiety when I've had those issues in the past. And so I'm familiar with the mental health system. And here I feel like the experience was much different and not in a good way. And I feel like there are so many things that were done really well during the pregnancy and the birth and the follow-up care. But that was the piece that was lacking that I felt was the most important piece lacking for sure.
It's very good to know about that. It's very important. So how long did you continue to have follow-up at home?
I had follow-up. I feel like the first week I was home, I had somebody come 3 times. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it was if I needed follow-up, like if I felt like anything was going on physically with me or the baby, I could go into the midwife's office, which was really close to my house. So it wasn't that big of a deal. It felt like kind of I could have unlimited follow-up if I wanted. But when I was ready, when I was physically feeling normal again, as normal as you can after having a baby, I guess. When I was physically at that place, I was able to just, stop going back to the midwife. And then but the follow-up care was, there are so many things you can do here and so many things offered that I don't hear about being offered in the United States, like the pelvic floor re-education. It's something they offer here almost to everyone. Like there's not really any requirements, and in the United States it seems to be pretty rare that that's offered, and if it is, it's quite expensive. And then for the baby, he did like physical therapy because he had some kind of like a kink in your neck, where you have a stiffness in your neck from the delivery. And so he went to physical therapy, I want to say a couple times a week for several weeks. He also went to an osteopath, so kind of like a chiropractor.
No, better than a chiropractor.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get the best.
This is just my opinion.
Yeah. These are things that we didn't ask for. It was just, this is where you go next. And we just kind of got passed around to all of these different things. And to me, I was like, this is a little bit overboard. And it felt overboard to me, maybe because I'm a brand new mom. And I'm like, this is a lot to handle. But I was also, you had
appointments all the time.
Yeah, I was always somewhere with him, which I guess I should be grateful for that. And I was at the time. I was like, okay, thankfully somebody is following the care of my son. But man, is this a lot to juggle? And so there was a lot going on. But I have to say, the care was there. I can't say that there was a lack of care in those areas. So
and so, what is it like going around with an infant and with the culture around having a baby with you, that sort of thing? Let's talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, there are some good things and some not so good things. I think I think one of the big challenges I had is, and I think this is probably across all cultures, but people telling me in public what I need to be doing with my child, basically, and spouting their ideas, which I must say feels a little bit more common in France.
Put a coat on that baby.
It was that. It was a hat. Everywhere I went, and my son gets really, really hot, and I put him in a car seat and he sweats, dripping sweat. And so I couldn't bundle him up. I had him in September. It wasn't I'm in the south of France. It's not cold. Yeah. And I swear to you, everywhere I went, there was someone around the corner telling me to put a hat on that baby. And I just wanted to be like, hey, do you think I don't want to take care of him? It felt very personal.
This is terrible, but it happened to me all the time because I lived in Utah at the time. And as you know, Utah gets seriously cold, right?
Yeah.
So you come with the first time we visited France, she was 11 months old.
Okay.
And so we fly to Toulouse, and it feels so warm compared to Utah. And so I'm not using the heavy coats and the gloves and the hats and all of that because I'm like, this is nothing.
Yeah.
And everybody kept on commenting. And so I would just have this line ready like, well, if I dress her the way you want me to, in Utah, she will never leave the house.
Right. Right, yeah.
Just relax. I got this, But of course I'm French, and so I can...
You can probably snap back really easily.
Yes.
And you probably have the right comebacks. And for me, as an American who's not super confident in her French language, I just got pissed off. Like, I would just get upset about it, and I wouldn't have anything to say, which would make me even more mad. And I was like, oh, I should have said this. I should have said this.
Right,
and
but afterwards, yeah.
So that was
it's terrible because I've had the opposite thing where I think and I've never said anything to anyone, but sometimes I think your baby is bright red. That child is too hot.
Like, take off some layers.
Yeah, take some off. It's terrible. But I've never said anything. The day I say something, then I'm an old French lady.
Yeah, I'm glad you're not saying anything. That's I feel like the worst, and I guess it depends on the person. But for me, it felt very annoying. Like, that was so annoying to me to have people act like I wasn't giving the right care to my kid. Yeah. And I'm like, you don't know him like I know him. Give me a break.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something funny that I feel like French kind of get a kick out of hearing that because they can kind of relate sometimes. And my in-laws are similar. They're French, and so they have the ideas about how he should be raised and all of that. But I also can complain to them about things like what I just complained to you about, and they'll laugh because they'll probably be like relatable. It's relatable for them.
Right.
But one thing that is very cool when you go anywhere in France, either as a pregnant person or with a baby, you kind of get treated really well and shoved to the front of any line.
Yes.
That I don't think actually, I know it's not the same in the States because I've been there with my son. And when I go to the airport, which I go quite often with him, and we every single time they just push us right over to the side area where you go straight through, and it's not even a question. It's like anywhere there's a line, I know that I get to the front of the line. So that's pretty cool. They definitely have a respect for you as a new parent.
Yeah.
And the same with the parking spots in the grocery store. There's always a family parking. Not that there's ever one available, but it's kind that they do that.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, I had a funny experience not so long ago where this very obviously pregnant woman was. Several people said go to the front, but she was waiting. She had sent her husband back in the back of the store to get something. So she was like, no, but he's coming back with more stuff.
Right. I can't.
But everybody who came by told her to get to the front of the line.
They really kind of push you to the front almost. They're like, you should not be standing behind me right now. And they can't, which is actually quite nice. It's, I respect it, and I feel like as a pregnant person, especially I was pregnant in summer in south of France and really pregnant at the end of summer. Yeah. And so I was just hot and uncomfortable all the time. So when people would push me to the front, I was just like, oh, thank you so much. Yes. Yeah,
that's cool. And so is your child getting any childcare? Are you with him at home all the time?
No, I'm glad you asked because childcare is absolutely amazing here. He has a NUNU or an assistant maternelle, and there are so many options for childcare here, and you pay almost nothing. I know that back in the States, a lot of women don't go back to work out of, it doesn't make sense financially because of how expensive childcare is.
Right.
So maybe their job won't even cover childcare, the paycheck they'll be getting, or maybe it'll just break even. So it kind of doesn't make sense. And here it's totally different.
Right. It's subsidized.
Yes, and there are so many options of childcare, just different childcare options, and the most you'll pay is a couple euros, per hour after you're reimbursed. I mean, it's really nothing.
Right.
So my son is in childcare part-time because I'm writing, which is about part-time. So
Right.
I put him in childcare 3 days a week, and that's when I get to work. And it's great for him because he gets to play with all the little kiddos.
Yeah.
And it's great for me because I get to have my time to work and a little bit of alone time. And
Right. And so if he has a nunu, probably she probably has 3 or 4 kids with her.
Yeah. And she's also part of what's called a RAM, and they go meet a whole bunch of nunus in this shared space that has like a baby like playground area, and I mean they have like 10 nunus come, and each nunu comes with like 4 kids,
Right.
and they're all playing, and so it's basically like the dream situation for my son. He just absolutely loves it.
Right, yeah. Where I walk my dogs, there's a little playground for babies,
Yeah.
And there's often, when the weather's good, there's often several ladies who take care of babies, and they just bring them all, and everybody's playing loudly, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I think it's super cool. I love that they're doing it. It's hard because my son is always sick. I think he is sick more often than he is not.
He's in contact with a lot of other kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's the price you pay, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to keep him home so he doesn't get sick. But man, is the childcare like options and the whole system here really, really awesome. I wish the United States could adopt something like, and they could in theory, but they probably won't.
It's a matter of paying taxes, really.
It's money. It's all money.
Yeah, it's money. It's the fact that French people understand that we're all better off if we have universal health care and good care for the kids and good schools and all of that. It's not. I'm not saying that French people are never selfish. But because we are.
Yeah, I mean, everyone.
Right, but we kind of have more of an understanding of what makes a society better overall for everybody. And I think definitely taking care of your pregnant women and of your babies, is very good. You should do that.
And I think as a whole, France and French people are less greedy as a whole. And so in the United States, I think there is, a portion of people who are not greedy, but a portion of people who might be a little bit more greedy, and it doesn't balance out quite the same. I think in France, the French people are just generally not as greedy, and they do see the common good of like all of these benefits. So it's more of a what does it take to be successful? Like in people's mind, it's not necessarily having the biggest house and having the biggest cars and all of that. French people are not consumers. I mean, we do consume plenty, but not like Americans. Not like Americans, no. And I'm not a consumer at all. I'm very much like a minimalist, and I'm just a terrible consumer. It's not my thing.
Right.
In that aspect,
you find a lot of French people who will tell you, you don't need to buy that. I have one. Come borrow it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or like buying secondhand is huge here, which I know it's gaining popularity in the U.S., but it's just naturally popular here, and it has been for a long time.
Yeah.
And so,
my parents were the consummate reusers.
Yeah.
They just use things. Like if somebody was throwing something away, my dad would look at it and go, "Oh, I can fix that," and he would.
Those are my in-laws. My father-in-law, the exact same way. Like he will fix anything, and I think it's kind of amazing.
Right. People would bring him radios when he was retired. People would go, "My radio's broken. Can you fix it?" And he would. Typically, you would find.
That's my father-in-law.
And like it's just before you go buy anything, you think, "Oh, can I buy it secondhand, or can I fix one, or stuff like that." So it's just not the same. But it also means that the economy is not happening. Like I mean, whenever I hear about Americans, like all the new TV packages that you get,
Right.
whatever, we have a few, but like, how long do you spend in front of the TV that you pay several $100 a month with all these, like...
Yeah. No, you're right.
Why?
You're right. I mean, the cost of things, like what is spent on just everyday things, it's astounding in the U.S. for sure.
Yeah,
and I don't think I realized it until I moved here.
Yes.
And I
No,
realized,
you don't see it. Like, but
No.
I forgot.
Yeah.
I grew up here
Right.
with very frugal people.
Yeah.
Blue collar, frugal people, nice, really lovely people, but not rich. And
Right.
I went to America, I did college, I had a successful career, all of that. We had a big house, we had trucks, we had this, we had that. My parents came over and were like, what?
Why do you need all of this stuff?
Right. Why is your house so big?
Yeah.
Like, well, Mom, that's just how houses are here,
That's American.
Yes, how it is. In the West, people have big houses. But she
Yeah.
said, but why? You don't need 4 bathrooms. Like,
No,
no,
I mean,
I don't. It's true.
But to be fair, I am definitely loving the smaller house movement that's happening. I am super comfy in like a 700 square foot house. That's nice for me. That's super cozy, but there is so much more space in the U.S. than there is here.
Yes,
So
yes,
I do see that proportionately. It kind of makes sense that the houses are bigger there.
Yeah.
Here, it's very tight, and there are a lot of people in a smaller space. So,
But even in the country, if you go if you drive an hour away from Toulouse, there are plenty of people. The land isn't that expensive, but they still build little, houses that share walls because young people don't want to be buying. They don't want a big mortgage.
No, yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, I understand why.
They're like, no, that's too much money. I don't want to spend that much on housing.
Right.
But they will spend on going on vacation. They will spend on food. They will spend on other things.
Which the vacation is a huge, huge thing that's different culturally, I think.
Yes.
Well, for one, you guys are, you have some vacation here. You're allowed to take a certain amount of weeks per year.
Yeah.
But yeah, the money is definitely spent differently.
Yeah, we still spend money, but not the same. Yeah. I'm always very shocked, and I'm going to say this even though it's a travel podcast, but I'm shocked how many times on the Facebook group, people will nickel and dime over, like, should I tip? Should I not tip? Like, you spent thousands on this trip. Like, who are we kidding? You have you have a massive house and you have big cars and you have all these things. Why are you worried about a €3 tip?
Right.
Like, so, but it's just a different mentality. It's really the mentality that is different. French people would never sweat the small stuff like that. Like, what? Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Some people do.
I have to say, I know some French people that will sweat the small stuff. I'm very intrigued by this Facebook group now. So what is the Facebook group called?
Oh, it's the Join Us in France closed group on Facebook.
Okay,
and
awesome.
It's my window into America.
Okay. Well, I'd love to join.
Because the questions people ask and the things they worry about, that I'm like, it's totally not what I would worry about. Not a bit. Like,
well, funny. Yeah, I'd be glad to jump on there and see what's going
they're
on.
fascinated with, I need to pick the right cafe. Really?
I'm fascinated with that. I can relate.
Really? Are there any bad ones? Like?
Oh yeah, there are. Yeah,
well, but then you go once and you never go again, right?
Yeah, but then you're wasting that one experience. I am with the cafe seekers.
Yeah, you're the cafe seeker. I couldn't care less. To me, a cafe is just a place where you sit and you have a café au lait and move on. That's it. Like,
yeah, but it's don't you want if you're spending the time and money, I want it to be a really good experience. So I'm going to choose the best cafe if I'm going to be going to one. I'd rather have that than have a crappy coffee and, a rude
But they all
person
serve.
serving me.
Well, okay, rude person is a different issue, but they all serve the same cafe coffee. Like they all get their coffee from the same providers.
Depending on where you're going, I guess.
Yeah, like all the cafes where I go, I see the same logos up against their coffee machines. Like, yeah, they just buy from the same wholesalers. So the coffee is essentially going to be the same. It's just maybe you prefer the chairs at this one or that one.
No, you're right. Sometimes I prefer the setting. Actually,
right, the setting is different. The bathrooms are different. All of that. Yeah, there's some differences, but I don't worry about it. Like when I go visit a city, I don't research cafes before I go.
I am researching every restaurant. I'm researching every cafe. My Google Maps has stars everywhere, so that anywhere I'm at, I know I can jump into a really cool place. I am a researcher to the end of time.
Oh, see, so you'll fit right in that group.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm that person.
No, but it's good. It's good for me to hear it because to me, I'm like, this is silly, but it's not necessarily silly. It's just what you want to do.
It's just different.
Yeah. It's what you want to do.
Yeah, where you want to spend your time. And I'm fine spending hours researching good places to go where that seems like a total waste of time to a lot of people.
Yeah, to me, it certainly does. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care. Okay, where I sleep, I care. I care about the comfortable bed, and I care about having enough pillows, and I care about those.
I probably care less about that than I do about where I'm going to dinner.
Oh, see, I couldn't care less. Like, to me, if I'm paying, if I can spend $30 for dinner, I know I'll have a good meal.
Yeah, you will, definitely.
Right.
But don't you want the best that $30 is going to buy you? I mean, clearly not. It doesn't really matter to me.
No, to me. So, I'm not hungry at the end. I had a nice meal. It tasted different than what I make at home. So, great. Like,
yeah, we see things very differently, Andy, when it comes to this. We are not on the same page at all.
Yeah, and I think most Americans are like you. Like,
yeah,
but I don't know if it's a French versus American thing. I think it might just be my personality that I'm like, I don't care.
I mean, my French husband his maps look the same as I do. He will research till the end of time as well.
See,
so
it's not that. It's not a nationality thing. It's just a personality. I really haven't had. I mean, I must have had a few bad meals in France, but
I've had a lot more than that. But yes.
But if you pay enough, I think it has to do with the price point more than anything.
I agree. I think at a certain price point in France, you can't really get a bad meal.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be your favorite ever, but it's going to be decent.
Yeah, but at the lower price points, like when you're just grabbing something,
then all bets are off.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You have to know, like, my daughter is vegetarian, so when we meet her in the city, very often we end up at places that will serve falafel because that's nice veg. So now I have my favorite falafel places in Toulouse just because I've tried so many.
I eat vegan a lot of the time, so I listen to your podcast about vegans in France, and it was a lot easier to eat vegan in Paris for sure.
Yes,
but there are some good vegan places in Toulouse too, and I love a good falafel.
Yeah, falafels are just good. So it's fun to go try them, because that's one thing I know she will have. So but it has to fit your personality. But it sounds like having a baby in France fitted your personality just fine. So that's good.
It did. It was great.
Yeah.
I would suggest it to anyone who, wants the experience.
We probably don't have I'm going to France just to have a baby thing.
I would love that story, though. If anyone does that, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, I've never heard of that because
I haven't either.
Because giving birth to a baby in France doesn't give that baby French nationality.
No,
you have to have parents and grandparents as well.
No, but maybe somebody will hear this podcast and they'll say, you know what, I can save a lot of money and I can also get a trip to France, and then they'll go to France and have a baby. I do know
an American expat who so she lived in Texas actually, and she came to France to have her baby.
Wow.
And then she moved back to Texas. I mean, she didn't move to France. She just came to France to be with her parents and have the baby.
Okay, so she came to France to have her baby. That's pretty cool.
She did, but she was French to begin with.
Oh, okay. That
right? So she was French to begin with. It's just she felt more comfortable having the baby near her mother and her father.
Which makes sense.
And because she's French, her parents are French, the baby is also French.
Yeah.
You know, so in that case, but I don't think it makes any difference because my daughter was born in the U.S. and she has French nationality because her mother and her grandparents and blah, blah, blah are French. So
right. So she has dual.
Right. So you base it, you're right, she has dual, and I do too. You base it on more lineage than just having the one child being born in France. So I don't know that it would help anyone. It wouldn't help them become French. That's
no,
sure.
It would just help them save money.
Yes, and have a good experience, hopefully,
and have a vacation in France. Yeah, they could pay for a vacation in France and have the baby and still pay less than you would in the United States.
Well, Shauna, it's been delightful to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I'm sorry. I just realized that you're in Toulouse when we started talking. Otherwise, we could have done this in person.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
Yeah, but I didn't pay attention. You might have told me and I didn't pay attention to it.
I don't know. You never know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie.
Au revoir.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Thank you, Chris Bolton and Erica Brown, for pledging to support the show on Patreon this week. And also thank you, Simone Gorman, for increasing your pledge. It means so much to me because I know you won't be visiting France for at least a few months, but you want to support me and the work that I do, and that really means a lot to me. I will do my best to spoil my patrons with interesting rewards. I have several in planning, but they require some reading of books that I'm not quite done, but getting there. Visit patreon.com/join us, Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes, to see the different reward tiers, and thank you so much for giving back. And I have to mention that I'm super proud of my voice map tours. Not only will you see the best of Paris, but you'll understand what you're looking at too. But of course, nobody's traveling right now, so nobody's taking my tours. The sales of my tours have taken a precipitous dive, which was to be expected. But eventually, life as we know it will resume, and you can make every minute in Paris count by taking these tours. And who knows, maybe you're listening to this long after the COVID-19 pandemic is over, so you can check them out on joinusinfrance.com/audio tours. As for the podcast, I'm going to continue to bring you trip reports, stories about France, France culture, history, food, destinations, all of that. Elise will have more time to be on the podcast now, so I'll invite her, but we will have to record her over the phone because even though we don't live far from each other, she can't come to my house right now, so we'll have to find a way to do that. And it's kind of funny to hear all these professional radio people who always had a voice professional, an audio engineer work with them. And now they're recording from home by themselves, and they don't know how to do it. I learned a lot. I'm still not perfect, but I learned a lot doing it for so long. I know that several of you have had a hard time getting home from Paris. It seems to have settled down by now. Most people are home. All right, let's get into this COVID-19 thing. This is totally unprecedented for me and for you and for the whole world because we've had pandemics before, but nothing that affected everyone quite like this one. France has ground down to a halt. People are staying home. Some are working from home. Some have been furloughed. And the police have started enforcing the stay-home rules by handing out fines to those who are in violation. So this is not quite a lockdown. It's just a fine, okay? But you can be outside for specific reasons, for shopping, for food, medical stuff. You can go to your pharmacy, your bakery, or whatever. My little village bakery is still open. They have a sign that says only 3 customers inside at the same time. And if there are more people, which there often are, you have to, everybody's standing like 10 feet away from each other in the parking lot. And then when you get in, there's tape on the floor to respect distances. And if you run into someone you know, which I did yesterday, then you just say hi for the distance. Everybody healthy, and that's all you can do. It's really odd. And the bakery is asking us to use contactless credit cards to pay for stuff so they don't have to handle money and then wash their hands again. Also, if you have to sign for anything, you're supposed to bring your own pen. If you have to show ID for any reason, you're supposed to show it at a distance and not hand it to anyone. Yeah, it's eerie. It's different. I went grocery shopping 6 days ago, and I won't go back for another week if I can help it. Probably we'll be okay. But yeah, it's very, very strange. But I'll still keep going to the bakery every couple of days for fresh bread because I don't want to live like a savage, okay? The second reason you can leave your house is to go to work. There are still people who work. Anything medical is still happening, including veterinarians. Food production, distribution is still going on. Folks who run the power grid and the water system, they're working. Some public transportation folks are working, but that's minimum service. Toulouse Airport is pretty much shut down. But I have a neighbor who works at the airport, and she said on Monday it was a ghost town. And she works the information desk. So she's been furloughed for now. And her husband has a government job. And so he works from home. That's just, that's just how it works. Some childcare folks are working too. And all of those who are working are really taking a lot of extra sanitary precautions, which makes their job harder. I really admire medical people and people who are working with the public right now. They're doing us all a great favor and putting their lives in danger. And I understand that doctors and nurses are trained to do that, but grocery store clerks and childcare people, they're really going out of their way to be good to everyone, and they have my gratitude. The roads are empty. It's eerie and depressing. People are posting constantly photos and videos of empty cities, and I don't know why we like to wallow in it so much because it's just depressing. It feels like we're at war, but we're not. I mean, honestly, once you're settled in your home and you have a routine, it works for most of us, but emotionally it's still difficult. Lots of French people who had the choice to leave the city because they have a place in the countryside or whatever, and lots of French people do. They have a family home somewhere. They've left. If they get good cell reception, wherever it is, and most places in France anymore, you get good cell reception. It's so much easier to do this sheltering in place in the countryside than it is in a city. And of course, all the people who are not working will get unemployment. Those who are unemployed already will get more time to look for a job. We have a pretty good social safety net in France, and it's doing its thing, and I trust things will get sorted out. We don't have, France doesn't have a lot of people living hand to mouth. We have some. We have homeless people and we have migrants, and the social safety net is trying to take care of them at this time as well. But we have, overall, we have a lot more social safety net. Let's just leave it like that. And so it's not quite as dire as I fear things are going to get in other countries. The third reason to leave your house is to go help a neighbor. I haven't had to do that yet, but that's allowed. The fourth is to get some exercise. You can run or walk or ride your bike, but you must go by yourself and you must start from home. I'm seeing lots of people on Facebook saying, "Oh, my husband got stopped for walking the dogs. He got fined for walking the dogs. That's not right, blah, blah, blah." And then you read on, and eventually they admit that before he walked the dog, he took his car and drove 10 miles to go to a nice place to walk the dogs. Well, guess what? Everybody knows that there are nicer places to walk than others, and if they all drive there, it defeats the purpose. So you can walk and you can run and you can cycle, but you have to do it from your house. No car involved at all. And yeah, you can take your kids out to run around and to ride their bicycles, but you can't meet up with other families. They haven't roped off the playgrounds where I live, but I haven't seen anybody using them the last few days because nobody's disinfecting them as far as I know, and people are being smart. Another thing that you can do is call for a repair person. So if you have a leak somewhere, you can call a plumber and they will come fix it. And if you have a problem with electricity, you can call an electrician. But this is not at the time to replace your bathroom, So same with computer things, especially for people working from home. They can get their computers fixed. People who work in the medical field can get their cars fixed, stuff like that. There are a lot of allowances for that sort of things. The borders between France and the rest of Europe have been closed. There are still a few flights, but only to get people home, pretty much. There were large groups of French people who were stuck in Morocco, where French people love to go on vacation. And so they are slowly coming back on chartered flights. And the biggest change is that we must all go out with our ID, which I've never carried my ID in my life, but now I do. And we must fill out a form before we set out to go outside the house, indicating one of the few reasons that are possible to go out. You have to check it off. And if a police officer asks you, you have to explain yourself and say, this is where I live and this is what I'm doing. And they're going to make sure that you're not, 100 miles away from home and doing God knows what. There has been lots of fines, especially in large cities. In Paris, there's even a handful of people that have been arrested because they absolutely refuse to stay home. It's going to get tricky because some people have a pretty nasty home situation. And so I don't know how this is going to work out, but hopefully they'll find ways to help them. Anyway, so let's all shelter in place. Let's all do our best to stay home. These are strange times we're living in. I hope it's completely obvious by now that traveling anywhere is a terrible idea and that this may continue for, many more weeks, possibly months. I don't know. These measures in France were announced for 2 weeks, but I'm sure it's going to be extended for at least another month because viruses don't die off like that. And until we have a vaccine, it could come and go. And what makes this so tricky is that there are plenty of people who are carrying the disease without showing any symptoms. So good for them for not being sick. I'm happy for them, but they can spread the infection fast because right now it's the virus that's doing the traveling and it's getting around. For the longest time, the types of questions I was getting on the group was, is it really bad in Paris, or is it really bad in the south, or where am I supposed to stay away from this place or that place? At this point, I hope it's very clear to you that we don't really, unless you're in one of the few countries that's testing everybody, and apparently Norway is doing that now. South Korea also did that. Anyway, even in France, they're only testing people who present with symptoms. So they don't really know the extent of the virus. And we know viruses get around and there are so many silent cases that so don't be worried about, is my state okay? Is my city okay? It is not. It cannot be. This thing is really everywhere. And the only way we can deal with it is just to stay home. And that is, it's no fun. It's no fun. I mean, I'm used to it because that's my personality. But it's going to be hard for a lot of people, and a lot of people are in denial. And it's going to be over the long term. It's going to have a lot of challenges, and that's we don't really have a choice, do we? But it will pass. It may be a few months, but it will pass. And I know we'll get sick of it, all of us. But at the end, we'll have wonderful parties and wonderful trips. And we'll go see all the things we have missed out on and do all the all the wonderful trips and visits that we couldn't do when we were at home. So let's just hope for all that and stay healthy and keep listening to the podcast. I'm hoping to not be too much of a downer. And if you have questions or comments, send them to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. I wish you a great week. I'll talk to you next Sunday. I can't remember right now. The episode is next Sunday. Let's see if I can click fast enough and figure it out. I should have written it down. Right here. Next week, it'll be episode 277. Oh, and it'll be an episode with Elise that I recorded at my house about a lovely place called Limoux that you've never heard of. So this will be a dreamy episode, and she did a really good job. You know, Elise, she's really good at making you wish you were there. So that'll be that. Thank you very much for listening, and au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.